Okay guys, welcome to another episode as part of season 4 of Badass Media Production. So in this episode I'm going to talk about recasting in movies and TV shows and why we kind of don't like the concept of recasting. So I'm going to look at examples of actually where recasting actually really works and where recasting really doesn't work and why we really dislike the concept of recasting. Okay, so one of the best examples of recasting in a movie franchise is, of course, the Bond franchise. It's one of the reasons why the franchise has been going for over 50 years. Now, people have their own fan theories on why, James Bond is the way James Bond is, and the fact that James Bond 007 is, of course, a different identity, played by different agents. And that's a very interesting theory, but I myself have a different theory. I believe that with each actor that plays James Bond, we are given a soft reboot to the franchise. Sean Connery's James Bond is his journey, his battle against the Spectre group. And of course, Roger Moore's James Bond took on the different genres that became popular during the 70s and the 80s, the martial arts movies, the kind of sci-fi movies that kind of got popular in the 70s. And of course, with Timothy Dalton, he was more of a darker, edgier James Bond that played into the violence of the 80s movies. And of course, the 90s, with Pierce Brosnan, we were given a kind of a hybrid of both Roger Moore and Sean Connery's James Bond. And of course, the latest incarnation, which is Daniel Craig, which takes on more gritty James Bond, which is similar to the likes of the Bourne franchise. And that all works really well. Also, Doctor Who is really good for recasting the iconic character as well. The idea of Doctor Who being a Time Lord and actually regenerating through becoming a new version of Doctor Who really works and adds to why the TV show has been going on for so long. I think that recasting element to Doctor Who, it really makes his character more interesting, that we see him under different lights each season, and that really adds to his character and it really works for the TV show and the sci-fi elements of that TV show. We've also seen some really good recasting in TV shows like the likes of Hannibal. Of course, Mason Verger's character was introduced in season 2 and he himself was played by Michael Pitt. Now, there was moments and events that took place in season 2 in which his character transforms, and Michael Pitt was recasted by Joe Anderson in season 3, but the transition was very smooth and you didn't really notice the change, and that is recasting at its best, when you don't really notice the change. We've also seen recasting in Game of Thrones several times. We've seen the Mountain being recasted 3 times now, and each time they've perfected the casting of that character, and right now we've got the perfect incarnation of the Mountain. We've also seen the Three-Eyed Raven being recasted as well, and thankfully that really worked as well because we were given the great Max von Sydow as the Raven, and that really worked as well. Dario Naharis as well, I thought that casting was really perfect and it really works well for the TV show. Another great example for recasting, and we have to bring up, is the casting of Dumbledore in the Harry Potter franchise. Of course, in the first 2 films, he's played by Richard Harris, and Richard Harris always comes off as kind of a kindly, wise grandfather for all the students, and that really makes him an interesting character. So by the time of Prisoner of Azkaban, in which he's played by Michael Gambit, people had a lukewarm welcoming for the new Dumbledore, but I myself feel that he's a different Dumbledore. He's a Dumbledore that has to handle different kind of problems, different type of chaos that the original Dumbledore had to handle. And that's why he seems kind of distant, that's why he seems kind of cold, and that's why he seems kind of a little darker. And that really works for Dumbledore because he is under a way more stressful environment than the original Dumbledore. But Michael Gambit's Dumbledore, he came off as much more powerful, as much more believable kind of head, kind of principle of this Hogwarts, and that really worked. And that's why I really enjoyed the recasting of Michael Gambit as Dumbledore. Okay, so I spoke of casting that did work, but I want to speak of casting that didn't quite work. In The Strain, a TV show produced by Guillermo del Toro, we seen, of course, Ben Highland play Zack in season 1, and Zack as a character, he's very much a loyal kid, a very smart kid, a kid who's loyal to his dad, and a kid that's He doesn't do stupid things. He stays, whenever he's told to do something, he does it, and overall he comes off as a really good, kindly character. By season 2, he's recasted and by Max Charles, and how he looks, his mannerisms, his dynamic, it's completely different, and it just doesn't quite work. And this is the case in which when an actor gets recasted, not only is his persona different, but also his looks different. They often change the writing for the character based on the new actor, and this just really didn't work, because Zach in season 2 is all of a sudden kind of a spoiled type character, kind of a bratty type persona, a character who's kind of more rebellious and more, he's kind of more stubborn, and it really just doesn't work for his character. He does a lot of stupid things that the original Zach, I feel, that wouldn't have done in season 1, and just really doesn't work for me. We've also seen recasting in horror movies. We've seen that a lot, and one of the most kind of on the nose for me was the recasting of Patricia Arquette in Nightmare on Elm Street. She was played by Tuesday Knight. That's actually her real name in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, and the two actors could not look any more different. Like, when I think of recasting for a movie or a TV show, there needs to be a sense of continuity in which the original actors look like, and this could not be more different, because Tuesday Knight, firstly, she's a good 5-6 inches taller than Patricia Arquette. Patricia Arquette is quite a small actress, so seeing that dramatic height difference between the two, between this character, between the sequels, it really does put you off. Her hair is completely different as well, the shape of her face is completely different, and that's what put me off when I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. We've also seen, recasting in, of course, popular sitcoms, and one of the most shocking was the recasting of Aunt Viv in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So in season 1 to 3, Aunt Viv is this kind of really powerful, independent woman who's really not afraid to voice her opinion, and she's quite a tall woman, and she's African American and very dark skin, and then by season 4 to, of course, when the TV show ended, she's played by a completely different actress, an actress that is completely different in terms of looks, in terms of height, in terms of her mannerisms, her speech mannerisms. Her character drastically changes from this powerful, independent woman to pretty much just being a housewife that kind of cares about, fashion and kind of clothing, and, it was just something Aunt Viv wasn't all about, and that recasting just really didn't work. Also, I'd like to mention the MCU universe. They've done a lot of recasting for certain characters. We've seen recasting of Ed Norton as Bruce Banner to, of course, Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner in The Avengers, and these two actors look nothing alike. And how we see Bruce Banner in The Avengers is very different to how we see Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk. And in the end of The Incredible Hulk, it kind of employed that Bruce Banner was very much in control of the Hulk, but we don't see that in The Avengers. I actually like what Mark Ruffalo brought to the character, but it's very different to how we've seen Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk. So in The Avengers, Bruce Banner is much more of a quirky character, a character who has a kind of a nervous twitch about him. He has kind of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde vibe about him. He refers to Hulk as the other guy, which really adds to his character. He's a type of character who closes off from people, and we did see that side in The Incredible Hulk, but not to the same extent as what we see in The Avengers. And that makes for a very interesting kind of changeover for the character. This is often the case with recasting. A lot of rewriting for new actors, and a lot of writing dynamic changes, and it really comes off as quite frustrating. We also seen recasting of Colonel James Rhodes in, of course, Iron Man 2. Of course, in Iron Man 1, he's played by Terrence Howard, and Terrence Howard plays him off as more of a straight man. He's more of a military type character. He's very much by the books. And Don Cheadle, who plays him from Iron Man 2 onwards, he plays him as a different character. A character is more fun and more kind of, he's got a great sense of humor, and that really works. And his dynamics between Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr., it really works really well. But the drastic change between Terrence Howard and Don Cheadle is that both characters don't look quite alike. I mean, the skin tone is very much different, the hairlining is completely different, so the transition between the two actors doesn't quite work well. I mean, I prefer Don Cheadle as a performer, and I think he's a drastic improvement to Terrence, but it doesn't quite work. Okay, so speaking of The Dark Knight, Rachel Dawes is of course played by Katie Holmes in Batman Begins, and of course by The Dark Knight she's played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and Maggie Gyllenhaal plays her in a different way. In Batman Begins we see that she puts her job before her love life, and in The Dark Knight we see that she's very much a character who's putting her love life before her profession. She plays the role as more of a quirky type persona that doesn't quite work. And we also have to believe that Maggie Gyllenhaal is the love interest between both Harvey Dent and Bruce Wayne, and that doesn't quite work either. Someone like Rachel McAdams will be slightly more believable. So let's just summarize this, why we don't really like recasting in a movie or TV show. Firstly, the sense of continuity between how the character looks originally to how the character looks when he's recast is sometimes lost and gone. And having a character that looks completely different in terms of height, in terms of hairlining, and in terms of body build in between recasting really doesn't work. Also, one of the things that really bothers us is the writing dynamic. Often cases the writing is different when a character gets recasted. It's often done in such a way to match the actual new actor, and it doesn't quite work because we don't see this process. We don't see how the original actor became this kind of new persona, this new actor. So it's kind of a rushed kind of character building, character development, character dynamics, and it doesn't really work. If they kind of kept the character the same in terms of writing, then the transition would be more simpler and more easier to follow. And these are some reasons why we do not like recasting in movies or TV shows. So what's your favorite case of a recasting in a movie? What recasting do you really hate? Thanks for watching, and subscribe to the channel if you like what you see.